Welcome to Sweetly Bored in Calm Vibes, where calm meets cozy. This channel is dedicated to bringing you relaxing bedtime stories, soft-spoken tales, and gentle sounds designed to help you unwind, reduce stress, and fall asleep with ease. Welcome, weary traveler, to our tranquil haven of stories. Stories crafted to lull you into slumber, while perhaps gently reminding you that your current bed isn't actually a sack of straw. Before we embark on this rather educational journey, do consider bestowing a quiet like upon this video, perhaps subscribe if you're feeling particularly adventurous, and whisper into the comments where you're currently battling your insomnia. What time is it? And are you quite sure you're not already experiencing a minor existential crisis? Now, fluff your modern, probably foam pillow, find that perfect, pre-sleep recline, and prepare to gently imagine yourself hurled back in time. Not to be some dashing, sword-wielding knight, nor a lady of leisure perpetually contemplating embroidery, but to experience life as it truly was for the vast majority of people during the rather unglamorous Middle Ages. You, my dear friend, are about to star in your very own historical drama, a full day as a castle servant at Stonevale Keep in the illustrious England of 1347. Prepare to discover why your current problems might just be delightfully trivial. 4:30 a.m., the alarm clock from hell, or the bell of doom. You are roused, not by the gentle crescendo of a smartphone alarm, but by the profoundly gentle clang of the chapel bell. It slices through the pre-dawn chill like a rusty axe, probably aiming directly for your most fragile dreams. Your eyes, with all the enthusiasm of a cat being forced into a bath, reluctantly pry open in the near-total darkness of the shoebox-sized room you share with three other, presumably equally fragrant, individuals. The cold, you note, is so intense you could probably carve ice sculptures with your breath. You're a mattress. Yes. A delightful coarse linen bag, generously stuffed with straw. After months of intimate contact, it has artfully molded itself into a topography of lumps and valleys, each more uncomfortable than the last. The straw rustles with every micro-movement, sounding remarkably like a nest of very dry, very agitated mice, and small, determined twigs appear to be waging a silent war against your lower back through the thin fabric. Your clothes, which have been your constant companions for the better part of a week, are damp with the night's dampness, clinging to you like overly affectionate, slightly mildewed children. You execute a slow, creaking rise. Every muscle in your body, apparently, has filed a formal complaint. Your bare feet make contact with the flagstone floor, an experience akin to stepping onto a frozen slab of regret. A shiver, both physical and metaphorical, races up your spine. The air, a complex bouquet of human bodies that haven't seen soap since the last crusade, mingles exquisitely with the sweet, cloying aroma of damp, slightly fermented straw. Beside you, Thomas, your roommate Anne, bless his cotton socks, your sole friend in this luxurious establishment, emits a soft groan. He's a mere 15, but his hands already bear the honourable scars of 100 heavy tasks. Another day in paradise, he mutters, a bitter smile gracing his lips, a feat you somehow manage to perceive in the gloom. You grope blindly for your boots. If they can even be called that. They're more like ill-fitting leather concepts, loosely tied to your feet, with ventilation holes strategically placed to invite water and mud to participate freely in your daily endeavours. Still, they're marginally better than nothing. And nothing, you remind yourself with a grim chuckle, is exactly what you'd have if you weren't so gainfully employed here. The first task of the day, a glorious adventure, awaits. And you know, with the chilling certainty of impending doom, that Master Harold, the chief servant, does not tolerate tardiness. Is a lean, tall man, with eyes that seem to possess an unnerving ability to see your deepest, most shameful thoughts. Rumor has it he was once just like you, but years of dedicated servitude have refined him into a much harder, infinitely more unforgiving version of himself. You shuffle through the castle's perpetually dim corridors, your bearish feet padding softly on the damp stone. Small, flickering torches attempt, with varying degrees of failure, to illuminate the path, casting dancing shadows that make the entire place feel particularly haunted. The omnipresent scent of damp stone and a rather robust mold is a constant companion, beautifully blended with something you really prefer not to identify. 5 a.m., the mortified fireplaces, or the great heat restoration. Your inaugural mission, resurrecting the fireplaces that have, in a rather uncooperative fashion, chosen to expire overnight. In the charming English winter of 1347, this crucial task dictates the difference between the nobility waking up comfortably warm or spectacularly irritated. An irritated nobility, you've learned, translates directly into your personal problems. You enter the great hall, a cavernous space with a ceiling that seems to stretch into infinity, adorned with tapestries that, even in the dimness, radiate an aura of being more expensive than every single thing you will ever own in your entire life. The main fireplace is a truly gargantuan affair, large enough to stand inside, should you ever feel the urge to contemplate your place in the universe from a smoky, ash-filled perspective. But now, it's a monument to cold, filled with a rather depressing pile of ash. You kneel before it, a humble supplicant to the gods of warmth, and begin the delicate art of ash removal. The goal? To be silent. Your hands immediately transform into charcoal sketches of themselves, and you know, with a sigh of resignation, they'll remain that way until sunset. The soot, a particularly adhesive variety, lodges itself under your fingernails, where it mingles rather poetically with the small, perpetually weeping cuts on your hands. Removing ash, you've discovered, is a nuanced discipline. Too fast, and you risk unleashing a veritable dust storm, which invariably triggers a violent coughing fit that sounds suspiciously like a dying badger, and might just rouse a noble from their pampered slumber. Too slow, and you simply won't finish in time. The correct technique is a steady, almost meditative sweep, meticulously separating the inert ash from the precious, still glowing embers. When you unearth a tiny, stubborn piece of red charcoal, a small, weary triumph blooms in your chest. Huzzah! This means you won't have to start from scratch with a flint and the damp, uncooperative kindling. You gently, almost lovingly, blow on the ember, and a tiny, defiant flame flickers to life. It's a moment of surprising beauty, a miniature dawn within the larger darkness. Now, for the truly challenging part, building the fire without choking the entire hall with smoke. You gingerly place small, dry twigs onto the nascent flame, blowing ever so softly. The scent of wood beginning to burn is, you admit, remarkably comforting, and a sliver of warmth kisses your perpetually cold face. Then, you make a mistake. A small, almost imperceptible miscalculation. One of the twigs, it turns out, was a tad too damp. A small, acrid plume of smoke rises, then cunningly expands, filling the stately hall like a malevolent spirit. You freeze. You pray. You beg the universe that no one has noticed. The smoke stings your eyes, bringing on an uncontrollable urge to cough. an urge you violently suppress. From the upper floor, you hear it, a faint rustle, the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Someone has stirred. Your stomach executes a rather impressive somersault of anxiety. You accelerate your process, adding more wood, desperately pleading with the burgeoning fire to establish itself quickly and cease its smoky insubordination. Thankfully, the footsteps recede. You allow yourself a quiet, wheezy breath of relief. The fire is now strong, stable, radiating a truly delicious warmth. For a precious moment, you allow yourself the indulgence of simply standing there, basking in its glow, admiring the dancing flames. It's one of the precious few moments of quietude you'll experience today. But alas, 5 more fireplaces await your fiery ministrations, and time, that relentless tyrant, marches on. You gather your rudimentary tools and move to the next, knowing each new hearth presents its own unique, smoky challenge. Some, you know, have terrible draughts and are perpetually rebellious, while others reside in the very sleeping chambers of the nobility, demanding an almost preternatural silence. 6 a.m., the animal kingdom, or the stables of stench. With the hearts now roaring, or at least politely flickering, it's time to face what is arguably the most aromatic portion of your day, animal husbandry. You traverse the castle courtyard, where the dawn, a hesitant and rather pale thing, finally begins to illuminate the sky. The morning air, for a fleeting moment, feels clean and fresh, a blessed respite from the stale, medieval odors of the castle interior. But this moment of blissful olfactory neutrality is fleeting. As you approach the stables, the distinctive aroma hits you like a particularly robust, very damp brick wall. It's a complex and utterly overwhelming blend, the pungent tang of horse urine, the earthy richness of fresh manure, the damp sweetness of soiled straw, the raw, primal scent of animal sweat, and something indefinable that can only be described as the Genesis quarry of animal life in a confined space. You shove open the heavy wooden stable door and step into what can only be described as another dimension. The smell here is so intense that your eyes, quite simply, surrender, watering profusely. You attempt to breathe through your mouth, only to discover this merely allows you to taste the air. The nobles' horses, magnificent beasts, occupy the front stalls. They eat, you note with a bitter amusement, significantly better than you do. They regard you with large, dark, knowing eyes as you pass. Further back, a cacophony of cows, goats, pigs, and chickens completes the noisy, odorous menagerie. Your first task, milking the cows. You retrieve your wooden bucket, a rather humble vessel, and approach the first cow, a large, temperamental bovine who clearly resents early morning disturbances. She shifts restlessly as you position yourself beside her. Milking, it turns out, is not quite as idyllic as the romanticized peasant paintings suggest. Your hands, already protesting from their earlier skirmish with the fireplaces, must now execute a rhythmic, repetitive motion. The warm milk squirts into the bucket with a surprisingly satisfying metallic plink, but every so often, you miss your target, and the precious liquid splatters onto the muddy floor. Mid-process, the cow, clearly a connoisseur of technique, decides she disapproves of yours. She delivers a swift, indignant kick that narrowly misses your head. You recoil, heart pounding. Much obliged, you mutter sarcastically to the cow, who, with an almost human indifference, seems to ignore you entirely. The milk you manage to extract goes directly to the kitchen, destined for the pampered palates of the nobles, to be consumed fresh or transformed into cheese. You, dear servant, will never taste this fresh milk. Your daily ration includes only the sour, watery leftovers from the cheese-making process. After the cows, come the pigs. If you thought the smell was bad before, you were charmingly mistaken. Pigs, it appears, revel in their own filth, a lifestyle choice they seem to embrace with considerable pride. They grunt and jostle, squabbling over the slop you unceremoniously dump into their trough, a rather mysterious concoction of kitchen scraps, vegetable peelings, and items you prefer not to contemplate. One pig, a particularly large and surly specimen, decides you are not dispensing the food with sufficient alacrity. He shoves your leg with his snout, nearly sending you sprawling into the very mud you've been trying to avoid. Your clothes, which were by no means pristine to begin with, are now adorned with a fresh, organic layer of grime. The chickens, surprisingly, present their own unique challenges. They peck at your hands with a surprising ferocity as you attempt to collect their eggs, as if defending tiny, priceless treasures. One particularly aggressive hen manages to peck you squarely on a knuckle, eliciting a muffled curse that, if overheard, would undoubtedly result in severe, perhaps even creative, punishment. As you toil, you can't help but notice the profound irony. These animals, which you consider intellectually inferior, exist in conditions only marginally worse than your own. Indeed, the noble's horses, you realize, definitely live better than you do. They have individual stalls, are fed quality hay with remarkable regularity, and even have specialized individuals dedicated exclusively to their well-being. When you finally emerge from the stables, your clothes are thoroughly permeated with odors you will, unfortunately, carry with you for the remainder of the day. Your boots, now a symphony of squelches, make a disconcerting sucking noise with every step, thanks to the heroic quantities of mud that have decided to take up permanent residence. You glance down at your hands, admiring the artistic, multi-layered blend of soot from the fireplaces and air well from the animals. 7:30 a.m., the breakfast theatre, or the art of being invisible. It's time to serve the noble's breakfast, a ritual that demands a nearly supernatural ability to be simultaneously efficient and utterly invisible. You must race to the kitchens to retrieve the trays, but first, a rather important protocol must be observed. First, you must cleanie yourself, a term used with considerable poetic license, given the available resources. A bucket of frigid, suspiciously murky water awaits in the courtyard, shared by all the castle servants. The water is so cold it inflicts pain upon contact with your skin, and so opaque you seriously question whether you're actually getting cleaner, or simply relocating the existing dirt. You scrub your hands with a desperate vigor, attempting to remove at least the most blatant layers of soot and other things. The water, with remarkable speed, transforms into a muddy brown, and you find yourself idly wondering how many other unwashed hands have preceded yours in this communal basin. Your face, too, requires a basic wipe, not because anyone cares about your aesthetic appeal, but because overtly obvious smudges of filth might offend the delicate sensibilities of the nobility. In the kitchens, the atmosphere is already a frantic, boiling maelstrom of activity. Old Agnes, the formidable head cook, commands the chaos with the unyielding authority of a military general. She's a short, robust woman, with arms muscled from decades of wielding heavy pots, and a temperament that can pivot from surprisingly maternal to truly terrifying in millisecons. You're late, as she barks, spotting you, though you know, with the precision of a seasoned servant, you've arrived exactly on time. Agnes, you've learned, always finds something to complain about. It's her peculiar method of maintaining order. The trays are ready, but be careful with Sir Geoffrey's. He's in a foul mood today. You hoist the first tray, and immediately feel the weight. It's not merely the physical heft, though the solid wooden tray, laden with pewter plates, earthenware ale jugs, and enough food to feed a small village, is heavy enough to make your arms tremble. It's the crushing weight of responsibility. To drop this tray would mean severe punishment, possibly the forfeiture of meals, or the whip. The journey to the Great Hall is a treacherous pilgrimage. The flagstone corridor is uneven, riddled with cunningly placed irregularities designed to trip the unwary. Steps appear in unexpected locations, and there's always the thrilling possibility of colliding with another servant, equally burdened with equally important, equally breakable items. You enter the Great Hall and, with a practiced grace, transform yourself into a ghost. This, you've realized, is the paramount skill of a successful servant, the art of being present, yet utterly invisible. You place the dishes before the nobles without a sound, without making eye contact, without daring to exist as a conscious, sentient being in their perception. Lord Edmund, a middle-aged man with a distinguished grey beard and a perpetually serious expression, presides at the head of the table. He chews slowly on his white bread, a luxury so unimaginable to you it almost glows, while discussing matters of land and lucre. You place his jug of ale beside him. He gives no indication of even registering your presence. Lady Matilda, meanwhile, frets over an embroidery project that isn't, apparently, yielding to her artistic vision. She delicately prods a slice of bacon, fresh meat, a sight that makes your mouth water involuntarily, while you serve her honey-sweetened oat porridge. She complains it's too cold, though you know, with absolute certainty, it left the cauldron less than 5 minutes ago. Sir Geoffrey, the eldest son, a young man of 20, seems to have been born with a profound irritation at the entire world. He is clearly suffering the delightful after-effects of last night's debaucheries, and his expression plainly communicates that he blames you, and all other servants, for his splitting headache. As you place his plate before him, he gives it a slight, almost imperceptible shove, sending a trickle of sauce spilling onto the pristine table. "Clean that," he grunts, without even deigning to look at you. You swiftly retrieve a cloth and meticulously wipe the sauce, your eyes fixed firmly on the floor. The sauce, you note, carries the expensive aroma of rare herbs and fine wine, ingredients that likely cost more than your entire month's wages. As you clean, you must be careful not to brush against Sir Geoffrey, nor betray any flicker of emotion on your face. Throughout this entire, elaborate process, you are acutely aware of every movement, every breath. One mistake, one loud noise, one glance at the wrong moment, and you could find yourself in truly serious trouble. The nobles converse about matters you are not meant to hear, make comments about individuals you are not meant to know, and reveal facets of their personalities that are strictly not for your eyes. Yet, you hear everything, you see everything, because it's impossible not to when you are mere feet away. You deduce that Lord Edmund is rather concerned about the recent harvest, while Lady Matilda suspects one of the chambermaids is pilfering fabric. And Sir Geoffrey, it seems, managed to lose a rather significant sum of money playing dice last night. This information is simultaneously fascinating and utterly dangerous to possess. Knowing too much, you've learned, can be just as perilous as knowing too little for a servant. When you've completed your serving duties, you retreat silently to the shadows near the wall, where you stand motionless, a human statue, awaiting any further commands. Your feet, already protesting from hours of standing, scream in silent agony, but you cannot shift your weight. Your back, too, broadcasts its displeasure at your perfectly erect posture, but relaxing is not an option. It's during these moments of enforced stillness that you have time to truly observe the life of the nobility. They eat slowly, savoring each mouthful of food that, for you, would constitute a lavish banquet. They discuss their plans for the day, activities that involve leisure, hunting, embroidery, reading, while you, with a grim certainty, know your day will be filled with relentless physical labor until nightfall. The irony, you note, is not lost on you. You are surrounded by delicious food, yet you cannot touch it. You are near the warmth of the fireplace, yet you cannot approach close enough to truly thaw. You listen to fascinating conversations, yet you cannot participate, nor even betray a flicker of interest. 9 a.m., the archaeology of last night, or the leftovers of debauchery. With breakfast finally concluded, you face one of the most revealing, and simultaneously most repugnant, tasks of your day, cleaning up the glorious aftermath of last night's feasting. The great hall, which now appears remarkably civilized in the morning light, tells a far different, far grimier story when examined up close. The flagstone floor is speckled with an impressive variety of culinary detritus. Gnawed bones of chicken and pork lie scattered where they were casually tossed by the revelers. Fruit peels have created small, sticky splotches that have, with surprising tenacity, cemented themselves to the stone overnight. Spilled wine has congealed into purple puddles, now dried and clinging like a stubborn, alcoholic glue. You begin with a broom made of bound branches, a tool that would be considered primitive even by the standards of the time, but it's all you have. Each sweep of the broom kicks up small, surprisingly tenacious clouds of dust, which promptly initiate a violent sneezing fit. The larger pieces of debris you collect by hand, a tactile experience you would very much prefer to avoid. The bones still cling to stubborn bits of meat and gristle, and some have, rather charmingly, begun to acquire a faint, unpleasant aroma. The rancid grease clings to your fingers, creating a uniquely oily, profoundly disagreeable sensation. You cannot, of course, clean your hands until the entire cleanup operation is complete, so you carry this delightful feeling with you for a full hour. Beneath the tables, you uncover what can only be described as an archaeological treasure trove of party remnants. There's a half-eaten pudding, which apparently tumbled from someone's plate and was subsequently forgotten. The pudding now boasts a rather impressive, hardened crust, and is attracting an enthusiastic delegation of flies. When you finally scrape it away, it leaves behind a sticky stain that demands vigorous scrubbing. Last night's candles have created their own set of challenges. Melted wax has trickled down the sides of the candelabras and solidified into artistic little puddles on the stone floor. Removing solidified wax from rough stone is a task that requires both the patience of a saint and the raw brute force of a long-suffering serf. You employ a blunt knife to scrape, sending small, surprisingly aerodynamic shards of wax flying in every direction as you work. As you toil, you can't help but engage in a few depressing mental calculations. That piece of bread, casually tossed aside and now unfit for human consumption, would have been your entire meal. That fruit, bitten once and discarded, contains more sugar than you consume in an entire week. The spilled wine, you estimate, would cost several days' worth of your meager wages. While scrubbing the tables, you discover occasional, tantalizing treasures. A coin, perhaps, that slipped from someone's overly opulent pocket. An insignificant sum for a noble, yet it represents several meals for you. Of course, taking the coin would be theft, and would result in severe punishment, possibly even mutilation. So, you leave it where it lies, even as your empty stomach stages a rather vocal protest against this enforced honesty. The most delicate task, however, is cleaning the truly valuable items used in the feast. Silver goblets, each worth more than an entire peasant cottage, demand extreme care. Any scratch, any blemish, would be attributed directly to your clumsy hands. You polish them as if they were made of the most fragile glass, 100% aware that one wrong move could result in instant, painful corporal punishment. The cutlery presents its own distinct challenge. Knives with surprisingly sharp blades must be cleaned without adding new cuts to your already scarred hands. Ornate spoons, with their intricate designs, accumulate tiny bits of food that must be meticulously, painstakingly removed. And everything, absolutely everything, must gleam when you have finished, because Lady Matilda, it seems, has a rather unsettling habit of inspecting the cleanliness and discovering imperceptible flaws. When you finally finish, the whole is, technically, immaculate. But you, my dear servant, are coated in a fine layer of filth that represents all the indulgences of the previous night. Your hands are black with grease and dried wine, your clothes bear stains that tell the entire sordid tale of the clean-up operation, and you carry with you the exquisite blended aromas of stale food, sour wine, and something indefinable that may or may not have been vomit. 10:30 a.m. The courtyard and social hierarchy, or the grand social performance. With the sun finally high enough to offer a tentative warmth to the morning air, you step into the castle courtyard for your outdoor duties. It's a welcome respite to be in the open air after hours of breathing the rather robust, stale atmosphere of the interior, but this relief, you discover, is tragically fleeting. The courtyard presents its own unique set of challenges, and its own rather rigid, uncompromising hierarchy. The courtyard is, you realize, the throbbing, chaotic heart of the castle during daylight hours. It's here that all activities converge, and where you can observe medieval society in all its stratified, frankly bewildering complexity. Every single person, from the lowliest stable boy to the haughtiest noble, has their exact, preordained place in this elaborate pecking order. And to deviate from it, even by an inch, can result in rather severe consequences. You begin by fetching water from the well for the kitchens. The well, a rather popular destination, sits squarely in the center of the courtyard, and there is, invariably, a queue of servants awaiting their turn. The hierarchy dictates who goes first. Personal maids of the nobility, for instance, possess an inexplicable divine right to jump ahead of general servants like yourself. You wait patiently, clutching your heavy buckets, and observing the grand theatrical production unfolding around you. Martha, Lady Matilda's personal maid, stands smugly ahead of you in line. She wears clothes that are, you note, subtly but discernibly better than yours, and she carries herself with an air of superior disdain that clearly broadcasts her elevated status within the servant pecking order. When it's her turn at the well, she deliberately takes her time, knowing full well you are forced to wait. At least I don't smell of pig manure, as she comments, rather too loudly, for you to hear, referring to your delightful morning's work in the stables. Other servants nearby snicker, and you feel your cheeks, already chapped from the cold, flush with a hot shame. But you cannot respond. That, dear friend, would be insubordination, and would result in punishment. When it's finally your turn, you lower the bucket into the well with the thick, rough rope. The rope, you note, is so worn that splinters, sharp and eager, embed themselves in your already abused hands. The bucket descends, echoing eerily against the stone walls of the well, and you hear the satisfying splash as it hits the water far below. Pulling the bucket, now brimming with water, back up is an exercise that tests every muscle in your body. Water, you discover, is surprisingly heavy, and the rope carves angry red lines across your palms as you haul. When the bucket finally emerges, it's full of clear, cold water, which looks incredibly tempting. You lean in and drink a little directly from the bucket. The water is icy and delicious, one of the few truly pure things you will consume all day. But you must be discreet. Drinking too much of the good water can be perceived as rather presumptuous for someone of your station. Carrying the heavy buckets across the courtyard, you observe the myriad other activities unfolding around you. The blacksmith, a burly figure, toils at his forge, and you can feel the radiating heat of the flames even from a distance. Sparks, like tiny, angry fireflies, fly with every clang of his hammer against the hot iron, creating miniature golden stars in the morning air. Near the stables, the groomsmen are meticulously preparing the horses for the noble's daily hunt. The horses, you note, are impeccably fed and brushed, their coats gleaming in the sunlight. They clearly receive better care than any human servant in the castle. You observe one groom carefully brushing a horse's manure, dedicating more time and attention to this task than any person has ever devoted to your entire well-being. In the outer kitchen, other servants are preparing enormous cauldrons for the midday meal. The fire burns high, and you can see sweat trickling down their faces, even in the cool morning breeze. They stir large, wooden spoons and bubbling, aromatic stews that make your stomach rumble audibly. Your next task, helping to carry firewood for the various castle fireplaces. The woodpile resides just outside the castle wall, where it was unceremoniously dumped by the peasants who pay their taxes in labor and materials. Carrying firewood sounds simple, but each log is surprisingly heavy and rough, leaving splinters in your arms. As you haul wood, you cross paths with Sir Geoffrey, who is now setting out for his hunt. He is mounted on a magnificent, powerful horse, clad in hunting attire that, you estimate, cost more than you will earn in your entire, miserable lifetime. As he passes, you immediately lower your eyes and step well out of his path. To look a noble directly in the eye is not merely a courtesy, it is a rigid rule that can, and often does, result in physical punishment if broken. But still, you manage a fleeting, illicit glance. His clothes are fashioned from fine, richly colored fabrics you have never even touched. His boots are of soft, expertly crafted leather, conspicuously lacking the holes and patches that define your own footwear. He carries a hunting spear, its polished metal tip gleaming in the sunlight. The contrast, you realize, is impossible to ignore. While he goes to frolic in the forest, chasing innocent animals for sport, you will continue to carry heavy objects and engage in strenuous physical labor until your muscles scream in protest. And while he will return to a lavish banquet, you will have your simple, uninspiring meal of gruel and hard bread. During a brief, illicit break from work, you lean against the cold stone wall of the courtyard and observe the ceaseless activity around you. It's like watching a complex theatrical play, where every actor knows their exact, pre-written role. Knights practice their swordsmanship, their blades making sharp, metallic clangs that echo eerily off the stone walls. Merchants, who have arrived to hawk their wares, negotiate with intense, theatrical flair with the castle's steward. Thomas approaches you, bearing his own, rather substantial burden of firewood. His face is flushed with exertion, and sweat, mixed artfully with dirt, creates tiny, temporary rivers on his cheeks. "At least it's not raining," he says, with a tired, knowing smile. And he's right. Rain would transform all these already miserable tasks into truly horrific endeavors. The firewood would become heavy and slippery, the courtyard a treacherous, sucking bog, and you would still have to do all the work, just under infinitely more miserable conditions. "Still have the rest of the day," you respond, and both of you share a dry, weary laugh, a laughter born of a peculiar blend of gallows humor and sheer desperation. It's the kind of laughter that develops when your situation is so utterly absurd that the only alternative is a full-blown, hysterical sob. 12 p.m. The feast of the forgotten, or lunch, if you dare call it that. Finally, the moment you've been subtly, desperately anticipating all morning arrives, your main meal of the day. Main meal, however, is a rather generous term for what is, essentially, a subsistence ration, unceremoniously dispensed in the servants' courtyard, a less than glamorous area of the castle specifically reserved for people of your disposition. The servants' courtyard is an open, rather exposed space, enclosed by low stone walls, where you and your fellow, equally unglamorous, servants gather to eat. There are, naturally, no tables or benches. Seating involves perching precariously on any available stone, if you are fortunate enough to find one unburdened by mud or general detritus. The servants' kitchen is, in essence, a single, enormous iron cauldron suspended over an open fire. Old Agnes oversees the food distribution with the same military precision she displays in the main kitchens, but here, her expression is marginally softer. She knows this is the only truly decent meal you will all receive today. You join the queue, clutching your wooden bowl, a bowl you painstakingly carved yourself with a dull knife during the precious few hours of freedom you enjoyed last winter. The bowl has a number of cracks, which you've attempted to repair with beeswax, but which still permit small, persistent leaks. It is, you realize, your only personal possession, apart from the clothes on your back. When your turn arrives, Agnes plunges a large ladle into the cauldron and, with a surprising flourish, dumps a generous portion of stew into your bowl. The stew, a rather mysterious concoction, is made with bones left over from the noble's meals, vegetables that are, shall we say, approaching their peak, and barley grains that lend a certain robustness to the broth. The aroma wafting from the bowl is surprisingly comforting, a hearty blend of meat, or what used to be meat, onion, wild herbs, and something that might be turnip. It is by no gourmet standards, but it is hot, surprisingly nutritious, and, crucially, made with actual ingredients. Compared to the rather uninspired breakfast, which was, effectively, nothing, this stew is a veritable banquet. You find a place to sit beside Thomas and a few other servants. Your motley group includes John, an older man who works at the forge, Mary, one of the maids who cleans the noble's chambers, and Peter, a boy even younger than you, who assists in the kitchens. The first spoonful of stew is almost magical. The warm broth slides down your throat, delivering a jolt of inner warmth. For the first time all day, your muscles seem to relax, just a fraction. You chew on a piece of meat you managed to fish from the bottom of the bowl. It's a bit tough and stringy, but it's real protein. Today, they even have carrots, Thomas remarks, holding up a small, orange fleck on his spoon. And indeed, there are tiny pieces of carrot interspersed throughout the stew, most likely vegetables that were beginning to soften a bit too much for the noble's table. As you eat, you converse in low tones. This is one of the precious few moments of the day when you can speak freely, without fear of punishment. The conversations are simple: complaints about the work, speculations about the weather, and small, rather harmless gossips about other servants. John, the blacksmith, displays his hands, calloused and singed by the constant spray of sparks. The Lord wants me to forge 12 horseshoes today, he grumbles, shaking his head. As if I were 3 men. Peter, the kitchen boy, looks utterly exhausted. He's only 13, but he's been working since before dawn. Agnes made me peel potatoes for 2 hours, he mutters, my hands a roar. You listen to these complaints, and a profound sense of camaraderie washes over you. You are not alone in this peculiar brand of servitude. All of you are trapped in the same grinding reality, working yourselves to exhaustion for basic food and shelter, with no discernible hope of improvement. There is, you discover, a strange comfort in knowing you are not the only one who finds this life challenging. Along with the stew, each servant receives a piece of dark bread. The bread is made with barley and rye flour, cheaper grains than the refined wheat used for the noble's pristine white bread. It's dense, slightly sour, and contains small, crunchy bits of husk that create a rather satisfying crackle when you chew. But even this coarse bread tastes like a lavish indulgence when you are truly hungry. You dunk pieces of the bread into the stew, savoring every last drop of the flavorful broth. The bread absorbs the flavors, becoming softer, easier